You're listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast with your host, Maggie Moggin.
Hi, small business owners. Welcome to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where we focus on creating brilliant breakthroughs for the small business owner. FYI, this is also the name of the #1 Amazon best-selling book for small business and entrepreneurship. The good news is you can find this book in paperback as well as ebook form. Just so you know which one it is on Amazon, type in Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, and the subtitle is Fresh Perspectives on Profitability, People, Productivity, and Finding Peace in Your Business. Okay, so today, I guess I should probably add another little couple statements in there so we're not confusing you. The first book in the annual series came out in 2017, and it has a blue cover. And we thank you for making us a #1 bestseller. And for the first 6 episodes in this podcast series, we've interviewed the 2017 authoring team. And in the last month or so, we've switched over to our 2018 authoring team. And the 2018 book, which is volume 2, will be released on November 14th, 2018, and it has an emerald green cover. So today's conversation is with an author from the 2018 book, that beautiful emerald green. You're going to love it when you see it. And I want to say, hi, rock stars. My name is Maggie Moggin. I'm the creator of the Brilliant Breakthroughs annual business book series and a #1 best-selling business author. I'm also a business coach and trainer, and sometimes even known as a small business success influencer. Today, we're honored to have a 2018 author, Susan White, with us, and she is also a #1 best-selling author. And she's here to talk to us about your business's peace and your mindset of peace and finding it through the willingness to succeed. So I want to say welcome, Susan White.
Thank you, Maggie.
The crowd goes wild here. Woo-hoo! And everyone, if Susan's name sounds familiar, that's because she was also on the 2017 authoring team, and she wrote about the shadow of hope. Right, Susan?
That's correct.
Right. And that's really fascinating because Susan came back and decided to write a chapter in the 2018's book, and it's the 8th chapter. It's titled, Are You Willing to Be Successful? And I love that, especially considering what Susan wrote about in the first book, in the 2017 book. So Susan, you cover a ton of ground in your chapter, and I'm going to let you explain it in a moment. But I also know that there's so much more to your topic than what you did. So maybe we should just start at the beginning of the journey about why being willing to be successful is important to small business owners, but we should probably talk about what that really is first.
Well, what it is, Maggie, is most people will typically focus on the word successful. And the key of that, the title is the willingness portion. Everyone wants to be successful, or I think I'm reasonable when I say everyone wants to be successful. I don't often make an all-inclusive statement like that. But everyone wants to be successful. But are you really willing to be successful? Willingness is, are you actually inclined towards, are you prepared for, and are you making the choices that are necessary to be successful? That's what the title is all about, and that's what the chapter is all about. It was kind of a fun little research project I did, Maggie. I actually spoke with 3 different people.
Okay.
And asked them what their definition of success was, and we actually got into very meaty conversations about success and willingness, and it was quite eye-opening.
And I've had the privy to read your chapter, so I know what's in there. And I agree, it is very eye-opening. Your title, "Are You Willing?" To me, that is really important because in my mind, willingness is about making forward choices and then forward actions to align with those choices. That's how I see willingness.
Exactly, Maggie. I think that that's a good way to think about it.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, Willingness is huge. And I I love your statement about people are going to focus on the word successful in the chapter, but the topic really is about willingness. And you had interviewed 3 small business owners, plus you shared some of your own thoughts about willingness to succeed, to be successful, right?
Right.
And this is, I think, a bigger hot topic than most people realize because we talk about, often in small business, it's about the tactics of how to become successful. And you're talking about the beginning of the journey, which is the willingness, which has nothing to do with which tactics you're going to use.
Correct. It has nothing to do with the nuts and bolts of of successfulness. You know, in my chapter, I explore um, luck and failure and the way that we invest in our own success. And interestingly enough, money, which most people determine as a measurement of success, was the least thing that was discussed by all the people I talked with.
I find that interesting, and yet I don't, because the success journey isn't about money.
More often, the concept of self-satisfaction came up and values came up as well.
So it's like personal development. Successfulness is a personal development journey.
Correct. If I can share with you just a couple of things from the chapter.
Oh, sure, yeah, bring it on.
One of the people I interviewed, Kimberly Elaine, who is a high performance coach, she talked about how success is the fruit of hope and action. That's how she defines success. And by the way, all 3 people I talked with had to really think about how they define success.
Hmm.
Debbie Leone, fearless life coach and author of I Am Fearless 12 Elements of Fearless Living. She defines success as living a fulfilled life and living on purpose. She goes on to talk about living her passion based on her God given talents, dreams, and desires. It just amazed me that nobody talked about money in terms of being the measurement of success.
Maybe we're moving to being a little more enlightened these days.
Right. Right.
Wonderful. And you had another small business owner as well?
Stacy Cott, yes, owner of Stacy Cott Photography. She talked about success is the completion of the little things because she finds that if she has the little things completed, that the big things all fall into place. And Stacy is the only one that mentioned probably about 5 years ago or so that she thought about money in terms of success. And then she started paying herself and all her values shifted.
Well, that makes sense
Right. She
because
also talked about how success ebbs and flows and that it's not consistent, which I think is really key when we're working hard on our businesses and we're thinking in terms of what am I doing to be successful or not.
wow, I agree with that ebb and flow. I call it expansion and contraction, that our businesses are living and they go through cycles. And we might even have different parts of our business going through cycles. So in one area, we might be really successful. In another, we could be struggling, because we're tinkering with it behind the scenes yet, or we're back to figuring out how to make it better. So this is really fascinating, Susan. Why out of all of what you've researched so far, why do you think the willingness is important to small business owners?
Ooh, that's a really great question. Um, I think willingness is important because it's so easy to talk about what we want to do and set ourselves up by putting all the structure in place. But if our heart really isn't in the structure that we've created for ourselves, we're just going to end up in a similar situation to what we are if we're working for somebody else. Why go through all the strife and the heartache of making all your own decisions and looking to reap all the rewards of being self-employed if you're just going through the motions?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Some of our younger listeners might not know this, but do you remember the Dunkin' Donuts commercial with the guy? He would wake up in the middle of the night when it was still dark out, and he would get to the edge of his bed and he would go, "Oh, time to make the donut."
Yes, at 3 a.m. or some ungodly hour like that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So what you're saying is that we as small business owners, because we create our working environment, if we're not coming from the right place of willingness and success and the right values to become successful, we've just created a job that we may end up resenting.
Exactly. Job being a dirty word and thinking that you're self-employed.
So we just created a job and we created our own hell
Right.
instead of
Right.
letting somebody else do it.
That's why I think willingness is so important. That's something that I speak about in my practice very frequently too. People will come to see me, and they will talk about being anxious, for example. And then when we start talking about what they're willing to do to alleviate their anxiety, we find that they really aren't willing to do what it takes.
Got it.
And just the notion that willingness is a huge component of making changes and um, creating success is a notion that most people don't really wrap their brains around because nobody has really posed the question before.
So this is a fundamental question that all small business owners should be asking themselves.
I think so. So many people think that they can make a windfall in something. I've seen so many small businesses go out of business very quickly. I live in a small community, and it's unfortunately, I see there was a frozen yogurt shop that just went out of business not too long ago. There was another clothing store that opened up in town that just went out of business. What what are they doing, and what are they thinking when they open their business? So many people think they're going to make an overnight success of their business, and it requires a lot of effort and a lot of planning. And sometimes people think they're just going to get lucky. And the truth is, luck is preparation meeting opportunity.
Who said that? That's a quote that you reference
It
often.
was a Roman philosopher by the name of Seneca.
Okay.
One of my favorite quotes.
Okay, so you got to be in it to win it.
Right.
Okay. And your willingness may very well determine what winning looks like.
Most definitely.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to pull back the curtain a little more. Just for our listeners, in case they haven't had a chance to look at your bio yet, Susan is a therapist. So she knows a little bit about what happens above our shoulders. And sometimes she nods her head, and other times she gets really excited because guess what? We're all sort of dealing with the same stuff. It just sometimes, not always, but sometimes it'll even show up differently, right?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Sometimes it shows up as the F word, and I'm talking about failure.
That is the F word for entrepreneurs.
It is, definitely. So I touch on that briefly. Debbie Leone talks about failure, and she really doesn't buy into that. She claims that it's only failure if you aren't learning something.
I just read that somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So I even touch on failure.
Wow. Okay. So you really start to unpack this, and I know that we're going to have about 5 more episodes with you to dive into this a little further, like maybe talking about some of your subtitles that you have there, like luck, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we have a lot to cover in the next year to help people dive a little deeper into this willingness. And, are we willing to be successful? But I want to ask you something that I think some of our listeners might be curious to ask you, the author, is out of all the stuff that you could write about, because you specialize in what happens above our shoulders, why did you choose to write about the willingness to be successful for small business owners?
Because I think that it is highly underrated in terms of exploration when somebody is wanting to go into a business. They look at bottom lines and they don't necessarily look at what really feeds their soul and their spirit. And I think that um, it's a prudent move for us to really do some soul searching before we enter into any sort of business.
Hmm. I completely agree with you. And I just met with a business owner that I've known for a couple of years. And she told me this summer she closed down one of her businesses. And I said, really, why did you do that? That was your passion business. That's how she described it to me, the passion business. And she said, you know, sometimes we shouldn't take our passions and turn them into businesses. And I said, exactly. I blog about that a couple times a year, because there's this whole thing about making sure you have passion for what you're doing, but there's a difference. And I think the word that everybody's trying to say is willingness instead of passion. Because if I have a hobby, I can kill the joy of that hobby brings me by turning it into a business.
I actually know a chef who loved to cook until he became a chef.
Case in point. Right, right. So there's that willingness, and it's different than passion.
It's the business of whatever it is that you're doing.
Right, right. And I love the fact that you said it's underrated. It's an unspoken conversation, if it's even unspoken conversation, as people are discerning what it is they should be doing and why, and then how.
The thing that came up most with the three people I interviewed was a sense of self satisfaction and a
Oh,
sense of um, the fact that she, for example, personal time and being able to carve out certain segments of time for yourself is really significant.
right. So there's a self-value there.
Right. Self satisfaction.
Okay. The inside job of success is what we're talking about, really.
Right. Definitely.
Cool. Wow, we're just going to crack this puppy open over the next year, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, before we wrap up, because I know we could talk a long time about this, but before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or are we going to save it for next time?
Oh, I think that we should save it for next time.
Okay, cool. Cool. Well, listeners, this is how you can learn more and engage with number one bestselling author Susan White. Go ahead and once November 14th occurs in 2018, go ahead and get the book Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner. It's volume 2 with the emerald green cover. And crack open chapter 8. That's Susan White's chapter. And you'll be able to start diving into what this topic is and do some reflection that it will be valuable for your business and your business's success. And at the end of Susan White's chapter, she has an invitation for you at the bottom of her author page. And I would encourage you to go ahead and take her up on that invite. Plus, she has some social media sites for you to connect with her. So there's a lot of really cool ways that you can stay in this topic. And here's something that's really cool. Right now, you can go to the app, Brilliant Biz Book, and that's all one word, Brilliant Biz Book. And it's a free app, download that. And when you get there, you can click on Ask an Expert, and you'll see Susan White's name. Click on it and type her question, and she'll reply back to you. I think that's a pretty cool bonus. What do you think, Susan?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I'd love to hear from people.
Cool. So everyone, I kept saying Susan White very specifically because we also have another author whose name is Susan, and they have very different topics. So today we've been with Susan White. I want to thank you for your time and your wisdom sharing today, Susan White.
Oh, thank you, Maggie. It was good to talk with you.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some fun over the next year, cracking this open a little deeper on each one of your areas that you wrote about.
Yeah, we'll definitely go deeper as we talk throughout the year.
Good, cool. Well, I'm really excited about that. And listeners, we appreciate you listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where you learn about how to create more brilliant breakthroughs for your small business. Shine brightly until next week.